Before we begin, of course, I do need to mention our sponsor. Are you feeling stressed out, perhaps overwhelmed by trepidation and or other non-resourceful emotions getting in the way to your success? Then go ahead to guidedhypnotic.com. That's guidedhypnotic.com and download your free guided hypnotic meditation. Guidedhypnotic.com. All right. I sponsor myself, so I have to just, throw that
Why
in.
don't you do the whole interview in that voice?
I could, and I actually have a button
here that lets me do that. So it won't wear me out.
Shouldn't I be the one that has that in case I don't want people to know it's me? That's like
right, yeah, I didn't think that.
I'll put a shadow or like a veil. I started writing for Rick Wake in 1993.
That's right. When we start covering things that we're not supposed to be talking about, with names to
I'm proud of all my scars. And
well, I want to do your intro here because it is appropriately short enough for me to dig into, and yet powerful enough to share your majesty.
I tried to keep it economical yet
majestic, which is nice.
Majestic, yeah.
Here we go. Peter Zizzo, an Emmy and Grammy Award-winning songwriter and producer whose work has sold in excess of 100 million records worldwide. He has written songs for and with artists such as Jennifer Lopez, Celine Dion, Avril Lavigne, Billy Porter, Jason Mraz, M2M, Brie Larson, Diana Ross, Pixie Lott, and many, many more. His songs have also been featured in many major films and television shows. As a talented developer, he was instrumental in the early careers of Avril Lavigne, Vanessa Carlton, Billy Porter, and Pixie Lott. As a composer for children's television, he has written and produced the theme songs for hit Nickelodeon series such as Smash, Blue's Clues Reboot, Rusty Rivets, Middle School Moguls, and Fresh Beat Band of Spies, as well as countless other songs for TV shows including Peter Rabbit, Winx Club, The Fresh Beat Band, and many others. A native New Yorker, he recently moved from Manhattan to LA and currently resides in Marina del Rey. Wow.
Who is that guy?
He is impressive. And perhaps you have some insights into that. And I just to preface, we shared the who with the what now?
You kind of froze.
Maybe
you were doing a bit, but you actually did freeze.
I have only so many pixels to deal with. So
there's this guy, Ed Bassmaster. You ever see this guy on YouTube where he does these characters like the look at it, where you look at this, look at that.
Oh, yes.
So he did another character where he goes to the store and he's as normal as you and I, and he's talking to the salesman. He's talking to him, and he's looking for kind of a... and then he makes this face. It's almost like a palsy that he's pretending to have. And he just stays like that, frozen for an uncomfortable amount of time. And then he just goes right back to talking.
Oh, that's awesome. Good.
And he does it like every... You think it's not going to happen. He times it so perfect. And the salespeople are so sweet. They're just sort of trying to act like they don't notice.
Oh, that's it. It sounds a little bit like a Impractical Jokers bit too.
Yeah. Well, you just froze digitally, and it looked like that face. Anyway,
so a little backstory, and first of all, thank you so much for sharing your most valuable asset, your time and your wisdom. We go back for a good maybe 20 plus years.
Very plus.
Yeah.
When did you come to the W&R thing, like mid-90s?
Yeah, I was like, I was what, 22 or something? Was I that young? 22, 20?
I was 40. I was 40 back then.
You've aged so well, considering.
I have. The Lee press-on stubble that keeps me sort of ruddy, like you.
Oh, it's good. Yeah, it's like a chia pet.
Chia head. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I was there at the sort of at the time it was pretty groundbreaking what everyone was doing, and to be part of the strategy there was amazing. But we are fellow Long Islanders, and you've done some amazing things, and you've always been one of the nicest, funniest guys. And I always loved working sessions with you because it was just a riot. We always had such a great time, and yeah, thank you. So share like a little bit of your story, because obviously you're still making it happen in the music industry, which is huge, because there's a lot of people who did not make it through the tumultuous times. But let's get a little background as to how you even got into this in the first place.
Well, I mean, I discovered that I love music really young. I discovered that I love creativity really young. It wasn't music first. It was like drawing and then writing poems and fiction ish. You know, when you're 8, how much fiction are you really writing? I remember I became obsessed with Dante's Inferno. Not
at 8.
No. The idea of it, like it in my hands, the idea that this guy
the Odyssey at 8
circles of hell, and I was like, wow. I didn't actually read it except maybe the beginning of the first page, and so then I wrote like my own version with like all haths and thee and you know, it was very silly. My mother, of course, told everyone that I had read Dante's Inferno in its entirety and decided it needed work, and I rewritten it. You know, and I just, no matter how many times I set her straight, I just didn't work. So, yeah, and then there was like the drums. I got into the drums, but more just playing on my bed with like spoons or wooden spoons. I had one particular bed sheet, I think it was a bed sheet, that had a pattern that was like squares, right? Like kind of very evenly spaced squares that became the drums.
Yeah.
You know, and I had my dad had gotten me like a drum pad, you know, those rubber drum pads, wood rubber drum, that became like the hat. So like I'd be like this on the drum pad, and with, you know, and I don't know.
You beatboxing it too?
No, I didn't know about that at the time. Okay. But I would play like, you know, records that I was into. This is when I was like 9, 10, and then I started getting into the guitar. Got a great guitar teacher, a guy named Bob Ankner. I know he's on Facebook somewhere. He was a real seismic moment for me. Just his, not only was he a great player and a very versatile player, but he looked like a combination of Jimmy Page and Brian May.
Wow.
And I think back now, he was like a man to me. Like in my image, he was this man. And he was actually 22 years old.
Oh, wow.
He had this great Sunburst Les Paul. I just idolized the guy. And he really uncovered very naturally sort of what I loved about learning the guitar. I still started getting in bands, and the bands I was obsessed with simultaneously, the heavy metal, but specifically Van Halen more than anything else. They were my adolescence. Eddie Van Halen was the most important figure pretty much in my formative years. David Lee Roth was a close second, just in terms of swagger.
Yeah.
And, you know, appeal.
Yep.
Yeah. But they were just all I cared about, the guitar playing. And then I was into all kinds of shredders, you know, the Yngwies. I loved Al Di Meola. I loved Neil Schon, Journey. I loved George Benson, you know, a jazz guy, but I just couldn't get over him. But also I was always listening to pop radio. So I loved, and, you know, in the 70s, in an hour on the biggest pop station, you would hear, in order, you know, in no particular order, you hear the Eagles, and then Fleetwood Mac, and then Stevie Wonder, and then, you know, early Elton John and Billy Joel, and then
it was like Casey Kasem doing the top 40.
Yeah, Earth, Wind and Fire, right?
Yep.
Doobie Brothers, like Pink Floyd. It was just James Taylor, Joni Mitchell. Like I can't even stop thinking of them. Bob Dylan, whoever you want. Yep. It was this endless array of completely unique melodists, lyricists, songwriters, and sounds. And everybody was each had like their own fingerprint, you know, as artists. And it's been a drag because over the decades, that's really sort of eroded to a certain degree, at least to me. I don't want to sound like, you know, get off my lawn or anything, but, you know, music wasn't driven by the thing that pop sounds like now. There was, you know, there wasn't the equivalent of like, oh, well, EDM is the thing, or hip hop is really made a comeback and it's influencing all the pop records, or it's all 808 drum kits. It's all, you know, it's all guys.
Well, there was Disco Sucks back then, right? Was that
sorry?
Disco Sucks? Was that, when did that make its thing?
Disco Sucks?
Yeah, remember everyone was like, Disco Sucks.
Well, sure, the backlash to how big it had been, but
yeah,
disco was an incredible form of music.
Oh, yeah.
It was really complex.
I know.
Really hard to play. I mean, this wasn't some dopey 4 on the floor with a sample and a guy rapping over it. No,
right. That's really crazy. A lot of the people who said disco sucked were the people who were, you know, the 3-chord, you know, monsters. They, you know, that's all they had.
Sure. And there's just as much of to be. I mean, listen, it's really hard. It's just as hard, if not harder, to do something special with 3 chords. You know.
True.
But the thing was, you know, you had this diversity in sound and styles and music. You'd also have an artist that, like, you know, take an early Elton John album. You'd have a song that was like a funk thing. Then you'd have like a beautiful ballad. Then you'd have like a country sounding thing. Then you'd have like a soulful kind of a thing. Yep. Then you'd have like a gospel sounding thing. And it just all sounded like Elton because these were all influences. And I think that's why I started to become interested in these songs and the songs, the writing of them. Paul McCartney, massive, massive, massive influence for me. And so I was also really into songwriting as I was getting my shred on, you know. And I was generally the chief songwriter in whatever band I was in, or one of them.
Do you remember your first song you wrote?
I remember the first song I thought I wrote.
Okay.
I just remember it was called Blackjack, and I think it was a little more than that. I thought that was a cool title, and maybe there was a guitar chord change. I don't know if I ever wrote this song or not. I was probably 9 or 10, but Blackjack. I remember the first song I ever recorded, like went in the studio with a band. I was 14. It was a song called I Want to Know that I had written. It was pretty good. I mean,
where was the studio?
I wish I could remember the name of it. It was in New York City, so it was a big deal. We all went into New York City, like our parents took us in, obviously like children, basically. And we laid it down. I think we did that and another song that my bass player, who actually went on to be quite legendary, a guy named Dan Lilker, who was in a band called Nuclear Assault, and he was a big influence on the pop punk metal thing. He's really a legend. It's amazing. It's funny because he was my bass player. He was the first guy that I met as a kid who also had a certain protege vibe about him. Like he just naturally was a great bass player, just a very musical thinker. He could write a song, and he was a sweetheart. We had a lot of fun. Dan and I. I haven't talked to him in decades, but I hope we reconnect at some point. And then, just funny side note, also in that same spirit, there was also a kid that used to hang out with us. This is a band I was in called White Heat. That was the first serious band I was in, White Heat. And there was a guy that was sort of like our de facto roadie at the time. He was like this really sweet kid. He would like help me carry my stuff, and I was giving him guitar lessons, and I just couldn't have liked him better. And that was Scott Ian.
Oh, wow.
Later of Anthrax. And what's funny was he had a band called Anthrax back then. Like, he's a real living testament to an unlimited appetite for your dream, you know, for what you want to manifest. Because I remember for years after I was friends with him, and Anthrax would go through all these permutations. They were essentially just a Judas Priest cover band. And they couldn't really find a singer. That was their big sort of Achilles heel. They couldn't really find a singer that stuck, that worked for them. But I was rooting for them. I even judged a battle of the bands once with other guys, where it came down to Anthrax versus this other band that really was much better, just in terms of just being a pro level kind of Journey-esque, you know, like just kind of had their shit together. And Anthrax was still this kind of messy, didn't have the right guy yet singing, but we gave them the W anyway, because they were like our boys, like we like, you know, Anthrax. So it was unbelievably inspiring over these many years to watch him become this huge star. And we've every once in a while we'll sort of reach out, we'll touch base with each other on Twitter just a little bit. And I think he has a biography out, and I'm pretty sure I'm in it or something like that.
Oh, you should.
It really meant a lot to me that he remembered. And but anyway, that band was really where I started getting serious about songwriting. And then I had a friend in high school, junior high and high school, a guy who's still a friend today named Brian Koppelman, who has become a massively successful screenwriter and television creator and movie screenwriter, and someone I really admire and have been inspired by throughout my life. He's given me probably some of the best advice and made some of the best introductions, not in terms of like career people, but just the right people for what I needed as a creative soul over the years. And his dad was kind of a second father to me, because I was always and his dad was Charles Koppelman. Well, it still is Charles Koppelman, who was a huge music publisher and exec producer, mogul, entrepreneur. And he was my first publisher. He was the first guy that actually bought a song or two, you know.
I was going to have a deal. He did one-offs.
He did one-offs at first, and then he offered me a full-on publishing deal. My senior year of high school. I think he was kind of doing it to get Brian more invested in and teach him about the business. But I know he also believed in my talent. And Brian was, you know, we were thick as thieves. He was my de facto manager for much of high school. And then we went off to college together as well. But my first cut came through them. It was the Weather Girls, you know, the singers of It's Raining Men. It wasn't It's Raining Men. I was talking like that when I was 17, but a song called March by the Weather Girls, which I believe you can find on YouTube. I'm not ashamed.
Man.
Although I think it's ridiculous now. The lyrics, I don't know what I was writing about and why. But boy, it was a thrill. It was a thrill. And I had my publishing deal. I was in college with my $50 a week, you know, which when you're 18, $50 a week, man, just coming in. Yeah. Fantastic.
So actually, as you're sharing this, it's occurring to me, you had your bands and like that was one part of your experience, but very early you saw the opportunity and were provided the opportunity to write for others, because I'm not sure there's a lot of, more so now I'm sure, but back then I'm not sure that a lot of bandmates and people who had a band was their focus. They were also thinking, oh, let me write for somebody else. It's completely different and outside of my realm of
That's a good point. And the truth is, I really wasn't thinking that. It was really Charles Koppelman, who just never really saw me as being the artist of the song. Now, I don't even think he was sure whether it was because he couldn't separate me from just being his son's best friend at the time, or how much was this prescience that I was really meant for a different focus, which possibly and probably maybe that was it. But he was the first one who introduced, you know, and then through Brian, who introduced the notion of other people singing my songs.
Right.
And I was never not into that. I just thought that, I mean, that was amazing to me. But ultimately, I had every intention of being the artist. And in fact, when I got out of college, my absolute focus was, keep in mind, I graduated in 1988 from Tufts University. And at the time, you had Phil Collins, Steve Winwood, and you know, Richard Marx, George Michael Bolton. You had all these male solo, Prince, obviously, you know, on the more soulful side. All these unique, super talented male pop solo artists that were just dominating the charts, and I wanted to be one of those guys. And I thought I could be. You know, I was.
Were you a singer too?
I could play all the instruments. Sorry?
Were you a singer as well?
Yeah, still am.
No, I meant, but like as in like your artistry, you were like the guitar singer.
I was it all. I was doing it all. I was playing all the instruments. I was like, I'm the white prince. I'm going to be the white prince. That was what I was thinking. I was definitely a white prince in terms of I was a spoiled Long Island kid, but anyway. But so I thought that was what I was going to do, what I wanted to do. But I simultaneously was playing my songs for people. So what happened was, after a couple of years of doing the, you'll like this. After like a year and a half, 2 years of kind of doing the showcases in New York and having A&R guys not show up, or then an A&R guy would show up and be like, wow, you know, in your demos, you're really like this pop kind of synthy thing. But then I come see you and you're like doing these blazing guitar solos. I'm not sure you know who you are as an artist. And I'd be like, but so... You know,
how talented I am.
I kind of did, and I kind of wanted to be all things, you know, which maybe means I wasn't a thing. It's like when a record label would say, "Oh, you got 4 potential first singles. 4 songs could be the first single." That means you don't have a first single,
right?
You know when there's the single. That there's no doubt that that's the song. So it was kind of the same thing. I was like, you know, jack of all trades, and which comes in handy if you want to be a creator of music for other mediums and people. So. In my broke 3 a.m. hours, my 23rd year or so, I started running into these Tony Robbins infomercials when I'd be watching TV late at night. And he was super young back then. He was like 28, 29 years old. And, you know, there was a lot of those commercials. Fran Tarkenton was the guy interviewing him back then. And there was a lot of stupid infomercials that I would see, the Flowbee, you know, all these real estate, you know.
Carlton Sheets.
Carlton Sheets, exactly. I wasn't going to say Tom Vu. Remember Tom Vu?
Yeah,
You know.
And those little guys, remember the those twins? Remember they were like I don't want to be politically incorrect, dwarves, midgets. They were little, like, you remember those guys? It was the infomercial.
What were they selling?
Like, real estate.
Really?
And I remember one of the lessons.
Bamboo was diminutive as well.
Yeah. One of the things they shared, I remember really powerful, and it still stuck with me, is like, we would tell our clients, find the richest guy you know and take them to lunch and pay for it. Yeah. And, they're like, well, why? They have all the money. They should be able. Well, no, because you want to get information from them, so you need to pay them for lunch. And it's like, that's fair. That's cool.
Yeah. I don't think it's wrong. I think it's actually smart,
Absolutely.
It's like if I'm pitching for something, for a show, and I lose to a guy, I usually find out who that guy is, and I meet with him because I want to know him. Yeah. Why?
And then kick his ass.
I could learn something from, Yeah. But watching the Tony stuff, I got really inspired. I found myself, going from like vague cynicism to like, no, there's something about this guy. And I couldn't afford it. I had a credit card, but I just called up and got the tapes, the Personal Power 30 days thing.
Yeah, and because it's that. Me too. I had them on.
Yeah, I was commuting between the area where Locust Valley, Brookville, Glen Cove area to Lynbrook daily, to a studio that I was working. This guy Gary Philadelphia had a place called Garrett Recording in Lynbrook. It's like a home studio, but it was a full-on facility, and he believed in my artistry, and so I was trading free studio time for babysitting sessions. Basically, I didn't really know what I was doing, which I'll come back to in a second. So almost simultaneously, got the Tony tapes, would listen to them going back and forth to Gary's, did the whole thing, workbook, really stay with it, and it changed my life. At least for a time, it did. Sometimes you need a refresh. But the lesson I never forgot from those tapes that I still espouse today is it's always your responsibility. Mm-hmm. You always have control over you, and you are never powerless. Things aren't happening to you. Yep. You're experiencing things that are there for you to learn from. There's always, like he would say, the worst possible thing happens to you. Tragic, heartbreaking, absolutely the pits of life. You have to learn how to say, what's good about this? What's like a good thing that I can take away from this moving forward? And it's just brilliant because there always is. One of the things, I want to turn this into a Tony Robbins, infomercial itself, but one of the things I always talk about, people love this to this day, and I always give Tony credit. Success is the result of good judgment. Good judgment is the result of experience. Experience is the result of bad judgment.
Yep.
Right? I love those kinds of analogies. Those are real life tools. And so there was something about that experience that along the way, I looked in the mirror one day in my bathroom. I was actually shaving, if you can believe it. And I thought, why am I stuck on this being the artist thing? I mean, I love writing songs and making music happen. I don't really like having to set up these showcases. I don't like the pressure. I love being center of attention. I love being on stage, but there's something to artistry that's different, where there's such a specificity to that person and their voice that only they can put their message out there. Only they can convey who they are through their music, and no one else could. And I just thought, I don't think that's me. I definitely think I'm a unique talent, but I could be doing a lot of different things, and I should maybe think about being more songwriter-y, producer-y guy. And I believe that was directly as a result to the work I was doing with those tapes. And because I was working in that studio, I was encountering a lot of clients that had shit going on. You had, in those days, early 90, 91, there was a big Latin hip hop thing going on. And a lot of these Latin hip hop guys were coming through Garrett Recording, and I was babysitting these sessions. A lot of female artists like Karina, and Sapphire, and Fascination, I think we're a girl group, and just a lot of these, Sweet Sensation. Like these artists were having big hits. And so I was hanging out with these guys, and they were really cool guys. They were fun guys. I mean, I didn't get the music really at all, but anytime I had to drive one of them to 7-Eleven, I'd be like, hey, you want to hear a song that I wrote? I'm a songwriter also. And I play them one of my songs. And these guys in their bones are just fans of good songwriting.
Yep.
So they immediately got that I could do this. They immediately got like, they were like, wow, man, so what are you looking for? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to make it, you know? And I wanted to do my own thing still, but I said, but I'm starting to think about just myself as a songwriter. They're like, do you want to write this song maybe for Sapphire? Or perhaps Corina? You know, I don't know why I'm doing a Ricardo Montalban impression, but you know, they were Latin American. I just kind of bonded with these guys, and I had the opportunity to start writing some songs. I wasn't even co-writing. I just wrote, and my first charted single on the Billboard Hot 100 was a song for a lovely, beautiful, talented young woman named Corina. And it was a song called Whispers. And it followed like a big top 10 hit that she had just had, which in the Latin hip hop world, you never want to be the single after the fluky top 10 hit, because that's usually the hit. Right. There doesn't tend to then be a series of hits after it. But it did okay. You know, I think it got to 47. It just made it just over to the left side of the Hot 100. Mm-hmm. You never met a more depressed songwriter in your life than a guy who loses the bullet at 47. It's amazing how your perspective, I was just talking about this on a podcast the other day that I did. It's amazing how quickly your perspective changes when you get some success. Like I went up to my buddy, one of my best friends, Ari Martin, was working at Epic Records and Marketing. And I knew the song had come out. I didn't know when it'd be eligible, if at all, to chart. I knew Hot 97 was playing it. I'd heard it on Z100 a couple of times. I knew we got plenty of ads in the P1 stations across the country, you know. So I thought, you know. And so we just opened up the new Billboard while we were sitting in this office, and we were like doing this. And then I got to number 93, and there was Whispers by Corina, but written by P. Zizzo with a bullet at 93. And we both went, oh. And then almost at the same time we went, if it never gets any higher than 93, again, I'm doing a Jewish mother voice, and I have no idea why. If it never...
It's Long Island, I get it.
Well, his mom kind of sounded like this, so we always talk about her affectionately, like with the advice she would give us. If it never gets any higher, this is a massive win. This is the validation of my career right here at 93 with the bullet. I'm in the game.
Yeah.
That lasted for 2 days, and then I was like, when's the next issue? When do they post the charts for next week? I'm just curious, you know. And then I got a call. Went to 72. I'm like, oh my God, it's really happening. Oh my God, I'm about to become a big songwriter. This is really happening. Then I went to 63. I actually remember the numbers. And then it went to 54. I was like, all right, so it's starting, you know, hitting the middle, but it's still moving, still bulleted, still getting airplay. And then I'll never forget on the phone, there's a radio promoter that I'd become friends with at the time. And I called him up. I was like, yeah, so what did we do this week? He's like, well, it's interesting. It went up to 51, but it lost the bullet. And I'll never forget, you could have dropped an anvil onto my head and another one onto my heart and another one onto my will to live all at the same time. I could not tell you how devastating it was that it only got to 51. Now, oddly enough, it had a brief little resurgence in it, and it did make it over to 47 for a week. I went into such a depression. You know, the funny thing someone said, if you want to meet the most depressed songwriter in the country, meet the guy with the number 2 song on the charts.
Right, yeah.
You know, because it changes. It changes very quickly. It's like on Deal or No Deal. You get this like plumber who goes on with his family, and they're struggling to make ends meet, and this is his dream, and he gets on there. And within 10 minutes of him being the contestant, the banker is offering him $620,000 because he's up to $675 to walk away. And he's like, there's 2 suitcases. One has $1 million, one has $1. And he's like, no deal. And I'm like, what are you doing? It's $600,000. 600. I don't think you make that in 10 years. But like, it's not enough. All of a sudden, it's not enough because he instantly. 93, as soon as I have it, is not enough. You have the dopamine rush of seeing it, and then it's, I wonder how much higher this could go. Not that I care. And then, you know, you talk yourself into a frenzy over the next time. And a very important phone call I had at the time, I had become good friends with a guy named Evan Lambert, who is, I believe, currently the president of Universal Music Publishing. Yeah. And we've been friends through both in our early 20s. He was one of the A&R guys that wasn't able to make my gig. back when I was doing The Artist. But the reason I kind of fell in love with him right away is, unlike almost every other A&R guy, he literally called me the day of the gig. He said, "Hey, it's Evan Lamberg." I said, "Hey, dude, listen, I just want to let you know I'm not going to be able to make your show tonight. I'm really sorry." I'm like, "You're calling to tell me this?"
Yeah, that's good.
Like, dude,
character right there. It's
you know, like respect. I felt respected. He felt badly. And I remember years later when he was leaving New York, I was signed to Universal Music. This was about 8 years ago. He was leaving to come out here. And we had him sitting down. We were all telling stories. And I told that story. And he kind of didn't get it. He was like, "Well, of course I called. I mean, I couldn't make it. I wanted to make sure you knew that I wasn't just not showing."
Yeah, I'm not a dick.
You would handle it any differently.
Right, yeah.
But I'm in the weeds. So I thought I was going to make a lot of money from Whispers, and it kind of didn't work out that way. I'd given all my publishing to these Latin hip hop guys, and whatever, it was cool. And I did some other things with them. But right around then, I met Rick. I met Rick Wake because I had a song. I was very enamored of him because I knew he was a Long Island guy. I knew he lived in Huntington, or more to the point, what was it called?
Cold Spring Harbor. Was he there at that point?
Yeah, but it was. It doesn't matter.
Was this after Taylor?
It was when he had that beautiful house.
Yeah, that was Cold Spring Harbor.
Yeah, after Taylor. Yeah. So I always knew about him because he was like, maybe a few years older than me, but I looked at him as a contemporary, and he had just shot to the pantheon of first call pop producers in the 80s with Taylor and the first Mariah record and a bunch of other stuff, Kathy Tricoli, and I'd always wanted to meet him. We knew people in common that I'd ask questions like, what's his vibe? Like, what's his specialty? Like, I would say I was jealous, but I was just sort of like mystified. Like, how do you get there?
Yeah.
And then I got a cut with a group on a record, a boy band called the Barrio Boys, Latin boy band. And I thought I was going to produce. Their management wanted me to produce. They liked the track of the demo, but the A&R guy wanted a name, and they got Rick Wake. The manager was really pissed about it. And he was like, "It should have been you. I don't want an outside guy. Like, you're the real deal. Like, this should be your record." And I was actually like, no. I've always wanted to meet Rick Wake. So actually this could be a really great opportunity. So please don't make trouble, because I actually want to meet this team. I knew who Rich Tancredi was. I knew who Bob Cadway was. These are names I just knew. And I was right down the street, and I had no entree.
Right.
So this was my entree. And that's how I met Rick. Without getting
at that point, was he the co-owner of Cove with Richie?
No, he hadn't. Whoa, yeah. The studio, yeah, I think so. Yeah. It wasn't clear, but it was clearly like he was the guy.
Right. Yeah.
There. But Richie was always around too, obviously, and so like, I think I had this. I met him. We had dinner. Something had happened. I'll tell you this story because you'll appreciate it. So Rich Tancredi was one of the first guys that I met. I mean, I loved him, but it was awesome. I really looked at him as being on another level as a synth guy from what I could do. He just understood how to make sounds and work with samples, and just I was kind of more just I'm just kind of go through presets and come up with ideas, and
right.
But he
would architect some sound,
more science. So he's more of a tech guy and an excellent musician. So so there was this wonderful moment that this manager kind of turned into a real challenge for me, where and both Rick and Rich Tancredi, I'm sure, remember this story. I tell it all the time. I did have a tendency to run my mouth back then. I could talk, and sometimes I'd realize I said something that I shouldn't have said. And earlier, the very first time I met Rick Wake, I had written with Taylor Dane and Russ DeSalvo. I'd actually had the opportunity through actually Evan Lamberg, who was at EMI, put them together, and Russ invited me into the writing session. So I wrote a song, really nice song.
Was that the first time you met Russ?
Oh no. We had become good friends. I think that's why he wanted me to come in on it, because we had developed a really good writing chemistry, and we were doing a lot.
Yeah.
And he said, you should come write a song. I think he had written one where he said, you should write one. I was like, oh my God, really? I'd never written really with a famous person before, so I was very nervous. And we wrote a really pretty song called Slippin' Away. And got a really great response from her publisher. And she threw down a vocal that was just phenomenal. I mean, she's just an amazing singer.
Yeah.
I got really excited about how good she was. I don't think I'd ever been in the studio at that point, maybe yet, with a singer that good. And I was at the Old Brookville Diner maybe a month later, 2 months later, and she was there with Rick. And I knew that was Rick. I just had seen pictures of him, and that's Rick Wake. And so I went to say hi, introduced myself, and Rick was like, "Oh yeah, I've heard your name, man. Nice to meet you." I'm like, "Yeah, nice to meet you too. I've always wanted to meet you." And then I say to Taylor in front of Rick, I go, "Yeah, man, that's I love that song we did." She's like, yeah, it's really good. I was like, people are saying they think it's like the best vocal they've ever heard from you. And she looks at Rick's like, "Yeah, I like the little demo that we did." And Rick's like, anyway, great to meet you both. And I went back to my table to sit with my then wife, or wife-to-be. And as I sat down, I went, "Oh, Jesus, what did I just say? They're saying that's the best vocal you have. This is the guy that produced all the hits. This is the guy that's the reason she's done all the vocals that people already know. Right. It's not the best vocal she's ever done. She always sounds great." It was just naivety. I didn't mean, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't actually mean it's better than Love Will Lead You Back. I just meant people, I don't even remember who actually did. I don't know. I think I actually meant that as I was hyping myself.
Right.
Like that I was like a guy that you wanted to know that got a great vocal out of her, but I was just an idiot at the time. So that, nothing ever came of it, but I just felt really frustrated that I had said that. Okay, so now fast forward to, I get a call from Rich Tancredi when they're starting to cut this song of mine. It's called Deeper. And he said, "Hey man, I don't think we've met, but I'm Rich Tancredi, and I'm working on the track to your song. And I really like the voicings that you use in the chord changes. I know the chords, but I want to do the same voicings as you. So I don't know, I think you live close by. If you want to come hang, maybe have some food and like kind of walk me through how you voice the chords, that would be awesome." And I was like, "Oh my God, fantastic." And I just thought it was really cool because it's not just the chord, it's how you voice it.
Right.
In an arrangement. And he was thinking like an arranger. So I went over to his house for this great afternoon. I loved what he was doing with the track. His sounds were so much better than mine. And I just was like, had a great afternoon with him. So I don't know, a couple nights later or something, I get a phone. I talk to the manager of the Barrio Boys, and I say, "Hey, guess who I hung out with?" He said, "Cool." I'm like, "Rich Tancredi, man." He said, "Oh, really? How come you were hanging out with him?" I said, "Well, he called me because there were some voicings that I was doing with the chords that he wanted to actually emulate, like do the same voicings in his arrangement." So it was really cool. I got to go over there and.
Was that for the Barrio Boys song or for a Taylor song?
For the Barrio Boys song. Okay. The Taylor song never got covered, but for the Barrio Boys song. And I said, "Yeah, it was really cool. He's a great guy. I really like what he's doing with the track." And the manager goes, "See, that's what I mean, man. You had to go over there, and because he couldn't even figure out the chords to your song. That's why I want you to produce." I said, "No. Not couldn't figure out the chords. He did what I would have done if I liked the way someone played something. Yeah. So I want to make sure, because I'm going to miss some things. Yeah. He's not a computer. I didn't feed the MIDI into his head. Like he liked my voicings. And it was a way that we got to bond as two musicians."
Yeah.
And I said all this to the guy, and he just wasn't getting it. He's like, "No, man, see that they're fake over there, man. They're fake producers. You're the real deal." I'm like, "I'm not the real. I mean, yeah, I'm the real deal, but they're making a great record.
Not more real than they are. They're doing a great job."
But I mean, like, I'm trying to get in the door with these guys. Like, I want to learn from them.
Kick it in. Let me walk in and be welcome.
Like, please hear me when I tell you that this is good news. I'm excited. And we get off the phone, and then he calls me later that night, late. And he goes, "Man, you should have heard what I was just saying to Rick Wake." I'm like, "Wow. What do you mean what you were just saying to Rick Wake?" He's like, "I told him your story about how you had to teach the chords to Rich Tancredi to Deeper. I told him, and he tried to say some shit to me, and I was like, 'No, man, you're a phony-ass producer. Zizzo's the guy that we want, man. You shouldn't even be anywhere near this record. You're just a phony. You're a shady, phony producer.'" And I'm on the phone, and I could feel my life ebbing out of my soul. that like, here was the most major opportunity I had with a multi-platinum guy to get in the door beyond just the one Latin hip hop cut that I had had and actually start to have the career that I dreamed of having. Actually, I don't even think he had the publishing thing yet. No, he didn't. But I just thought I could become a go-to.
Yeah.
Just like my friends Shelley Peiken and Arnie Roman or like Alex Forbes, like songwriters that I knew that were writing the songs. You know, and for Rick's artists, they were like New York people.
Yep.
Jeff and Alex, like all these guys, and I was like, I want to get in there. I want to be one of those people. And I'm listening to this, going, this is ruined, because I already knew that I had screwed up the first meeting.
Right. Yeah. So Rick's like, that guy.
And I'm imagining Rick hearing my name invoked. Probably he hadn't heard my name since then, and this is the next time he's hearing about me. Is that apparently I'm telling the manager of the Barry Boys that his guy can't even figure out the chords.
So I get better vocals out of Taylor, and I show his program.
3 chords that have been in a million other songs that are in that song, just over his head, just out of his depth. And I'm like, Joe, I gotta go. I gotta make a call. So I call Rich Tancredi because I knew he must know.
Yeah.
Because he and Rick were.
Yeah.
I call Rich Tancredi, and I'll never forget the way he answers the phone. It's just the way he said it. He goes, Pete fucking Zizzo.
Yeah.
and it sounded like he didn't even care. He sounded like he was in a really cool movie with his people, and I was just this idiot that blew it. And he was just like, you schmuck. You know, what's up, loser? You know, and I was just like, Rich, I imagine you know what just happened. What the manager talked to Rick. He's like, yeah. He told me. I'm like, Rich, we were there together. Can you really imagine me turning around and going and saying that to him? And I told him about how I called him, and I was like, I got to work with Rich, and I explained what I was doing, and he just wouldn't hear what I meant. He heard, he couldn't figure your shit out.
Right.
You should be doing it. And I said, Rich, look, I'm really, really sorry that this came back to you like that. I promise you, like, I admire you, man. I want to do more with you, or feel free to do my tracks. I think you're amazing. And I hate that this kind of toxicity is now happening when I'm just trying to get in the door with you guys. Like, why would I do that? I'm trying to win with you guys.
Right.
I want to make you guys like me, you know? And he goes, look, you and me are cool. I get it. It's fine. Rick, yeah, I'm not so sure.
Not so much.
I think that might be Dunsville. And I'm like, Rich, I wouldn't blame him, but do me a favor. Just I'm asking, you don't owe me anything, but if you would do me this one favor, could you call Rick and just ask him to call me? Give me 10 minutes, 5 minutes. That's all I need. I just want to have a chance to explain. He's like, you know, I can't make any promises, but I'll talk to him. So we hang up. 5 minutes later, I get a call. Hey, it's Rick Wake. That right there, man. That right there told me, this is a guy I want to know. This is a guy I want to learn from. Because another guy would have been like, I'm not calling that clown.
Right.
I don't need some bitter fucking, you know, wannabe in my camp. But he called me. And I explained to him, I took him through the Taylor thing. I told him the whole thing. And he's like, yeah, he goes, you know, I thought maybe you were just like a bitter guy. I'm like, I get that, but I'm like 26. How bitter could I be? I'm
still in my early stages.
Yeah. Like, I'm bitter. I know. It's like, I'm just an idiot. I just put my foot in my mouth sometimes. You know, I'm like the Joe Biden of
your manager was, or the Barrio Brothers managers was also.
Yeah, he wasn't helping.
He was the bitter.
He was coming from a pure place. Like, he wasn't a bad guy.
Yeah.
He just didn't have a filter, and he wasn't listening to what was really being said.
Right.
And it created some problems. But I said to Rick, look, I'm just asking you, just guy to guy. You know, I admire your work. I've been trying to get in the door. I've wanted to meet you a long time. I think I have a lot to offer. I think you would really like what I do creatively, and I just hate that this happened. And he's like, well, look, you know what? Why don't we meet for dinner tomorrow night? Let's go to the Brookville Diner and just start over. He said, I think we just got off on the wrong foot. I was really touched by that, man. I was really touched by that. And it was funny because I had also played this song that I had written, Misled, which I'd written with my friend Jimmy Braylauer over in Roslyn, another guy I admired like crazy until I finally had the opportunity to, I don't mean until I had the opportunity to work for him and then I didn't admire. I mean, he was like one of the first people I admired I got to be creative with, and I still admire. But I had this song and I had played it for Rich Tancredi when I had hung out with him. And he thought it was great. And he's like, yeah, I'll play this for Rick. This is really cool. This is really cool. And he had called me back and said, I played it for Rick. He didn't really hear it. I'm like, oh, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, I think it's a really cool song, but Rick didn't seem to get it. I was like, oh. And I was really disappointed. And when I met Rick for dinner, I thought, you know, maybe I should bring that song up. Maybe I should be a little entrepreneurial myself. And I said, hey, man, by the way, you know, I'd given a song to Rich. He told me he played it for you and that you didn't really dig it. And I'm thinking maybe you need to hear it again or something, because I just feel like it's a really special song. And I'm not trying to go around Rich or anything, but like I would love for you to hear it again. And he was like, huh. I was like, what's it called? He was like, Misled. He's like, man, I don't, maybe I heard it. He goes, all right, tell you what, meet me in the studio at midnight and let's listen to it again. Went to the studio, played it for him. He's like, I passed on this? And I'm like, oh, it's a 2 listen. It's a 2 listen. He probably heard it, didn't get it, maybe wasn't really paying attention. And if I hadn't gone back and made him listen again, and by the way, that's the story of so many hits and artists. Like someone pushed, and, you know, my aforementioned friend, Brian Koppelman, you know, when I was at Tufts University with him, there was a girl, singer-songwriter, local, playing around Cambridge. She was studying to be a veterinarian. I happened to hear her playing on the grass one day, and I thought, she's not really my thing, but Brian's going to lose his mind. So I said, Brian, you got to go check out this girl. You got to go listen to her. She's like the real deal. She's like a classic, and I know your taste, and I think this is for you. And he went and listened to her, and he flipped out. I was like, I got to get my dad up here. Got to get my dad up here. He had to bring his dad up there a couple of times. He had to be a bit of a bear before his dad got it. And was like, oh, you know what? No, I get this now. I want to shop this. That was Tracy Chapman.
Wow.
You know, and it's, you know, you can't just take what's given to you. You have to be willing to question it. You also have to know when to move on. But, you know, if someone played something for someone for you, which is a great thing, a very nice thing that Rich did for me, but Rich can't control, nor can I, the frame of mind or the moment when it's playing. You know, maybe he's distracted by something, maybe he's not paying attention, maybe he just doesn't get it at first. So anyway, that became,
like, can grow on you. Like you hear it once, like, oh, okay, and then you hear it go, wait, oh, actually, that's pretty, wow, I get it.
And ultimately, Rick pitched it on his own to Celine Dion, and that became a hit with Celine. I remember him telling me that she was going to do it. I couldn't picture her doing that song, but.
Was that one of your first like big artists to perform a song?
Oh yeah, I mean, I had I think before then, between the Karina thing and then I think I had done some things with the Pointer Sisters. I got to go out to LA and write with this one of my favorite producers of all time, Peter Wolf, who had done, like, you know, Everybody Rang Chung Tonight and King of Wishful Thinking, which Rick then produced a remix of as well. That was a hit. But yeah, Celine was starting to blow up, you know. She wasn't quite what she became, but she was, you know, Beauty and the Beast, and If You Asked Me To, and then this was going to be the next record, which of course had Power of Love, which just took her through the roof. And then I was the next single. With Misled. Was once again, I was following a massive, ridiculously big, so the same thing as Karina, ridiculously big song that then they put the next one out, but a lot of radio still playing the first one, and they kind of don't want to play 2 singles at the same time. But it still did great, and it did great all over the world. And that was my first big song. And I that was a lesson learned. Like, okay, you got to know, but don't be afraid to go back and make sure, you know?
Well, and yeah, that's so important, I think, right now. And I saw that also in music, but it's not just the music industry, that persistence and that willingness to just stay at it. You know, you use Scott Ian as an example. You use like there's so many
Tony
times.
Rock talks about Colonel Sanders. I tell that one all the time.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. How old he was when he started, like in the 60s, and how many restaurants he went to offering his recipe for free before one would try it. I think it was over 1,000 restaurants.
Yeah. And it's so powerful because right now I think we're in a time where people are finding a lot of reasons to give up, with so many different things coming in at us. So, I mean, I think it's really powerful to just show that it's a consistent strategy. So as you were doing that, at some point, because now, I mean, it still seems pretty early in your career. At some point, like, was there a time where you just turned off? You're like, you know what? Artistry is just never going to be a thing. It's not not even a focus. Was there a time? Yeah. Was there a time that just happened, or is it just the next thing you knew, you're like, oh, wow, I'm just writing a lot and I'm not even thinking about performing or anything anymore?
I think from that moment in front of the mirror, it was the beginning of the end.
Okay, so that was it. Yeah.
And it was a happy moment. I was like, I kind of got to like unburden myself from it, because I'd always been a performer. I did a lot of acting. I have acting ability. I could, I've been threatening to take an acting class out here and just for fun audition for things. I love performing. I still love being the center of attention in a way. And hearing myself.
While you were doing that, were you also doing any session work, like either live or like playing on records, or was it just your own kind of thing?
Some playing on records. People that knew would have me do guitar parts or a keyboard part or two, but it wasn't how I was making a living. It was always through publishing and songs. Right. But yeah, the Rick Wake era, and then Rick, subsequent to that night that I played in Misled, he then came to see me. No, that night he said, I'm going to start a publishing company. I really want it to be a New York thing. I want to sign all the best writers in New York to me. And at the time, I had Sony about to make an offer. And so he knew he had some competition. And I'll never forget, he called me about it. He goes, look, I'm not going to be able to give you the kind of money that Sony can give you up front, but I'm going to play your songs for Clive. I'll play your songs for Whitney Houston. I'll play your songs for Celine. I'll play your songs for Taylor. I'll get you in rooms to write with people like that. Like, I'm a guy who's I'm in the game. I'm not a creative director at a publishing company who may or may not be there a year from now. Right. It's like working for the head of the
hundreds of the writers.
The attrition rate at most publishing companies, most entertainment companies, is really high. I mean, it's just it's a revolving door. I don't know that I'd ever started an album project for a major label, and at the end of the project, anybody that was there at the label in the beginning was still there. Even the label wasn't even owned by the same people anymore. Sometimes to the death knell for the project. But it was the turnover was always unbelievable, even in the best of times. So I think, I really became focused, and there was a very competitive atmosphere in the W&R with the writers there. Me and Billy Mann and Arnie, and I don't think Russ was ever signed there.
No, but he did a lot of.
He was around. Yeah, he was part of the gang. Yeah, there's just some amazing writers there. We were all friends. We all liked each other, but we would get depressed when we'd hear each other's stuff sometimes, and get jealous when we heard that another one got a lock for the Celine record and we didn't yet, that kind of stuff. It was a real driving thing, and it really became my artistry, was being a writer and producer under that imprimatur. That, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, and that model, I think, was, I don't know if it was as unique as maybe I thought it was, but I thought it was the way you guys would produce the song, as not like a demo, but it was the record. Hire the singer to demo singer that would sound like the person being pitched to, so that the A&R guy or the artist could already hear it as a finished product. And then it was like, okay, just recall the mix and throw
that's really, I forgot about that. That was a very interesting concept that Rick had. Whereas, look, I've heard demos of songs that had been hits before. But they were the songwriters' demos. They were cheesy. They were very different than what the produced record sounded like. Right. So whoever got the song on an A&R level really had to be able to hear through to something special. And back then, guys like Rick were the A&R guys, you know, Russ Titleman and Lenny Warnaker and Ted Templeman. These guys were producers and musicians and guys that could hear something of value in maybe a wrongly produced or underproduced demo. So Rick's thing was, we're going to do this the right way now so I can present it and make the artist just picture themselves singing it.
Yeah.
And I think it worked to quite a degree, and turned everybody into a better producer, and changed everybody's thinking about, you know, it's not just about writing the song, it's how you present it. Nowadays, I mean, I don't know the last time I pitched a song to a record or an artist, because the artist, you have to co-write with the artist for a long time now. But yeah, I think that was unique. And he had the studios, and you know, they were spending a lot of money to do all that stuff. We were hiring. I mean, I was able to hire like a horn section. I was able to hire like 4 of the top background singers in New York. You had like Curtis King and, you know, Cindy Mizell and Lisa Fisher coming in, you know, like ridiculous. Yeah, like Fonzie Thornton, like ridiculous access to like the top talent for a demo.
Yep.
And
but what was great is it turned into the record.
It became the record, right? All those elements would stay. So his gamble was
have to redo anything.
Yeah, his gamble was he'd get the money back in the budget because he'd get the song cut, which a lot of times he did.
Yep.
It was a unique atmosphere. I think there were things that probably should have been different about the way that it was run, or some aspects of that. But you know, that's just part of the value, is you sort of learn. You look back and go, why didn't this stick around? Why didn't this stay? And then going forward, you kind of learn some things for yourself. Not that I've ever wanted to start a company like that, but yeah.
So peak of my career was when Napster came out, right? That's when, for me, I started to reevaluate and look at changing, you know, moving into helping people create incredible music of their lives, and went on the road with Tony and all of that. Yeah. But for you, how did you navigate those challenges when W&R started to go away and all of that stuff started to happen and the studio started closing and you saw, you know, just basically the implosion that occurred? What was going on in your mind at that time? And did you have to come up with did you have to pivot, for lack of a better word?
Not then, because as the W&R era was ending, I had Vanessa Carlton and Avril Lavigne getting signed, and there were records being made, and I think maybe an M2M, I had a pretty big hit with M2M called Don't Say You Love Me. And so I was able to sort of parachute and land into something where I literally went right from W&R into a pretty rich joint venture with Atlantic Records, Lava Records, really. My friend Jason Flom offered something there because of the success of Avril and Vanessa, which I can't take nearly anywhere near even half the credit for, but I definitely was very instrumental in terms of observing, bringing them in, helping develop them, and getting them signed, and then being a part of the early sort of casting of who they were.
Right.
And that's A&Ring to a degree. That's talent development. And so I had that. I was going to be doing that. So I didn't necessarily need the publishing deal anymore for financial stability. And also, as my deal was ending with W&R, I initially thought, and I think this hurt Rick, and I didn't mean it to, but I initially was not going to do a publishing deal. I was going to just like own my own publishing for a while and just build up a new catalog. And then a couple months, or just as I was leaving Rick, I got this ridiculous offer from one of the major publishers that it was just the kind of thing you just can't say no to. And he found out and called me up and said, you know, you lied to me. You said you want a publishing deal. I would have gotten you the money. I would have done this or that. And I said, I had no idea that I was working with a manager and he had found it. And I said, I'm sorry. I just, I said, but this is like, I have to do this, So for me, it just transitioned where I was a lot focused almost entirely on just the artists I was signing.
And were you feeling the resistance in the industry from like the labels and the record?
Not yet.
Okay.
When I left,
anything yet?
Not yet, because really we're talking about, this was like 2002, 2000.
So it's still, things were still humming along.
Amazing. You were still buying a CD to have the song. You know, people bought records. You know, so the mechanical royalties were a major part of my income, as there were for many songwriters. You know, as I always felt like in Hollywood, like there were screenwriters over the years who would make, you know, high six figures a year, and they've never had a movie made, but they're selling screenplays. And they're getting hired to do polishes and rewrites, and their names they're not credited, but they're making a ton of money as writers. Maybe that's changed too. I'm not in that world enough to know, but it just, you know, in songwriting, that just went away completely once MP3 and then
well, that's what I was sort of referring to. Napster was when
Napster, and iTunes happened.
So what was going on for you when that happened?
What year was iTunes, Napster? Was it late 90s? No, that would have been like mid-aughts.
Yeah. I mean, it's like 05, 04.
Yeah, things got harder. I remember this now. There are a bunch of artists that I got signed or couldn't get signed, whose records never got made, or who flaked out, or who just, for one reason or another, just were, you know, a year of my life just for naught, you know. And there's some things going on in my personal life that were making things really tough for me as well at the time. And it was a bleak period.
So how did you navigate that? Like, where did you start focusing in order to reinvent yourself, for lack of a better word, or parts of yourself in order to navigate those challenges?
So
because
at the time, I remember now. I actually remember. I didn't mean to cut you off. I had a manager, a guy named Rick Aliberti, who became a kind of father figure to me. Best manager I ever had. I mean, I never had a manager after him. He was just. I've been actually meaning to reconnect with him. So Rick, if you're watching, let's reconnect. I just love the guy. And he had a lot of ideas, you know, for me. He saw me as something more than I saw myself. He's like, oh, wait. He really kind of locked in the deal, the joint venture thing. So post this, we had another idea, which let's get private money and let's start an indie label where these artists you're developing can all be in one place, and it's funded, and you have a head of A&R. It's your game. And, you know, I was very excited about it. And we tried, we just never quite got the financing together, and it never really got off the ground. And, you know, I did have a very nice publishing deal at the time, so I was able to kind of hold down the fort. But I was looking at new ways of developing artists. I found an artist I really believed in around 2007, 2008, that I got through my kid's school. There was a hedge fund guy who was a weekend warrior, a drummer in a covers band, who just had tons of money, and he wanted to invest in something like this, and he fell in love with this artist that I had. And so it became like an indie project with like big management. David Sonnenberg became the manager, and you know, I started getting some really, you know, significant players involved. You know, once again, for reasons that have mostly to do with the financial crash. We kind of lost that guy at the time, and it really wasn't until 2010 that a shift started to happen for me away from the traditional record business, which was Nickelodeon.
That's the Blues Clues. That was 2010.
Well, Blues Clues is now.
Yeah.
But the first time I ever had an opportunity to do something for children's television was I was, you know, doing my thing, developing artists. I don't remember what I was working on, but always a lot of stuff. Oh, at that point, I was starting to partner with my friend Mike Mangini, an incredible two-time Grammy Award-winning multi-platinum producer who I'd always admired. And I'd met him before, but we had the same manager. We both had Rick, and then we were both on an episode of The Apprentice. Actually, we got called. It was a music-based task on this particular episode, and they needed like real producer guys, songwriter guys to help each team. So that's how we met, and we were very different types. He was very enamored of my musical songwriting thing, and I could not figure out how he thought the way he did sonically, frequencies, where a record was. He was the guy more than anybody else that made me realize that I'm not as good a producer as I think I am. That's a record producer. That's a guy who hears something objectively. his ego's never in it. I'll write a piano song and he'll go, maybe that's not a piano song. Maybe it's a guitar. And I'll be like, no, I mean, I guess we could try, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
I would just be like, I wrote a piano song, let's produce it.
Yeah.
He's a producer. So we had partnered up and we were starting to develop an artist together. I was always working on a lot of different things. So out of nowhere, I get a call from a guy named Doug Cohn, who was the one of the video department heads at Atlantic Records when I had my joint venture. He called and said, hey, I'm now like the head of talent for Nickelodeon, and we've got the show called The Fresh Beat Band, and it's about a band, and they play little pop songs for kids, and it's educational. And I don't know how you feel about something like that, but I'm feeling like we could take the songs in a more sort of current direction and maybe inject some new blood into it. Would you be willing to get on the phone with the creators and me and have a talk about maybe writing a song for the show? And there was something instantly that I got kind of giddy about. I just thought, man, that would be so cool to write a Peter Zizzo song, but that like little kids fell in love with music because of that song, or first started to dance in front of a TV because my song came on. I had never thought about something like that. You know, when you're younger, it's all about using your musical ability to get chicks.
Right.
Then it's your ego wanting to be like the hottest hand and like the most relevant contemporary guy. And of course, you know, we all always want to be that, but this was a new potential validation and avenue that I had never thought of. So I did write a song called Friend Like You. And it led to me writing 5 other songs for that season. And then I won an Emmy for that show, for my work on that show, which really locked it in as an avenue for me as a creator. Yeah. Oh yeah, and I was working with BB and CC Winans. I was producing a chunk of their records. So BB and I had become kind of close, and we were working on stuff together. Yeah, there was actually a bunch of things going on. But I started regularly doing the Nickelodeon thing. And I got another nomination the next year for a song I wrote for Peter Rabbit. And I just became really hooked on it and just wanted to do more and more of it. And then I had a lunch with 2 of the executives from Nickelodeon who invited me to pitch show ideas if I had any. We love music-driven shows. I don't know, you like to write, right? You also like, because I also would write screenplays. I was sort of a dilettante screenplay writer, always enamored of the craft of screenwriting.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, no, I love telling stories too. It's just not anything I've monetized. They're like, well, look, if you have any ideas for a show, we're wide open to hear them. And that bug never left. And from back then until today, that's my goal, is to sell television shows. And to that end, I'm taking little steps year by year towards it. I think the step now is going to be where, for the first time, I'm going to start being the only songwriter for entire shows. There's a couple of those things that are okay. One of them hasn't happened yet. But it's so far so good. And then the other one is happening, and it'll be probably start this fall.
As the songwriter, not yet.
That's the guy who writes all the songs. Yeah, right. It's a Netflix show.
Now, do you change when you were doing that shift? Do you is there a different mindset to writing when you know it's going to be for a younger audience, or are you just kind of doing your same thing and then just simplifying it a little bit? Like how do you go about?
Yes to all of that.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the beauty of that world is they're gonna, once they know you, they're gonna come to you for what you do. Mm-hmm. They want what you do. Yeah. They'll cast you, almost like an actor. They'll say, oh, well, I want the Zizzo vibe on this thing. So you're within these very, very clear and tight boundaries of what you can write about, what the references are, where in the story this takes place, or maybe it's the theme song, which is really the thing you really want. So you've got all these boundaries, and there's language boundaries, obviously, and it in a way makes you more creative. It's sort of like the thing of like, if you wake up in the morning and you go, oh, wow, I got nothing today. I can work on that song that I started. I'm going to work on that all day. And you have this great idea about how cozy it's going to be, that you're just like in your studio, like in the mix, and like you get the whole thing done, and you get all day. You don't do shit. the whole day goes by and you're about to do it all day long and you never actually get to it. And then you realize you screwed it up. But if someone gives you an hour and a topic, watch what you do.
Yeah.
You'll do some of your best work. And I feel like with the Nickelodeon and other networks, but it's been so far mostly Nickelodeon, it's kind of like that, where they literally, I once did this with my son, Ari Zizzo, incredible songwriter, producer, artist. Check him out. I mean, wow. I once, with him, he was younger and he was having writer's block. He was like, I just don't like anything I'm doing. I can't seem to write anything. I can't finish anything. I can't start anything. I don't want to do anything. I hate everything. And he was hanging out by my studio. Said, we were coming back from getting some meat. I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go up to my studio. There's an open room. I'm putting you in there and I'm closing the door. And you are not allowed to come out of that door for an hour. And I want you to write something. And he's like, Dad, I don't. Fine. I was like, okay, get in there. Take your guitar, get in there. I'll see you in an hour. Close the door. He wrote one of the best songs he's ever written.
Wow.
Really. Like a key song that the contacts he's made so far in his life came largely because of that song.
Wow. Very cool.
People that do love his music, that's one of their favorite songs. I did the same thing with Vanessa Carlton. She was a reluctant genius. She was more like Stanley Kubrick as a filmmaker, where you made one movie every 10 years,
Yeah.
But they'd be mostly great songs that she'd write, but you had to really get her to finish them and get her to like just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And one night I said, all right, you know what, Vanessa, you sit there at the piano. I'm going to go home and have dinner with my family. And then I'm going to come back down. I expect you would have written something. And she was kind of laughing. She was like, that's ridiculous. But okay. And so I left, went home, ate dinner, came back, and she had written a song called Pretty Baby, which was one of the singles from her debut album. It's amazing. It's uncanny. And I find that too. If I lock the door, give myself a limit, if I have those limitations that Nickelodeon has put on me, I'm more likely to write something special within those boundaries.
Very
cool. I love it.
Dude, I mean, throughout this conversation, there have been so many huge, learning moments as far as how to apply, easy applicable stuff, like blocking out time is not that difficult to do.
And yet it is.
But most people don't do it.
I'm rarely that great at it myself, but I don't kid myself about its importance.
Right.
And I know that if I don't do it, if I don't keep an appointment with myself, I'm going to regret it. And I do every time.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, you can learn things about yourself like this. I know, and I'm sure other creatives can relate to this. If I have to write a song, let's say it's a 30-second song, and something that you would think you could do in an hour or two, I'll leave the day open. And I know I'm contradicting what I just said. Oh, I've got the whole day, but it's a little different because you have an assignment, you have a deadline.
Right. Yeah. So
I'll, maybe there'll be someone I want to see, someone I want to hang out with. And I'm like, do you have any time this week? And I'm like, yeah, actually, but I got to just stay home day and night because I'm going to go in and out of this thing all day long. And the 2 hours that I'll need are going to be spread out over 12.
Right.
And it's better that way because I don't go down a rabbit hole. Like for me as a creative person, if I keep stepping away and coming back and stepping away and coming back, I always have a more objective read on what I'm creating.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes out more empirically likable to the next person because I didn't get lost in it. Now, that's me. For someone else, they put their head down, they do something brilliant, they pick their head up and it's just done. That's awesome. I've done that. It just doesn't usually end up being the most significant songs for me.
Well, so did you change the way, because I know you shared you have the assignment, the blocks and so forth, but did you change the way your writing process when it came to writing songs for kids? Do you get yourself into a different state? Do you prep differently for a song for a child versus a song that would be for a pop artist or something? Is there any your process any different?
I don't know that I ever made a conscious decision to do it differently. I know that if I'm writing a song just by myself to write it, something will come to me in an inopportune moment, like I do transcendental meditation every day.
Mm-hmm.
maybe during a transcendental meditation, maybe in a dream, or maybe I wake up in the morning and something pops into my head and I'll start voice noting it. And my process is I voice note a lot of stuff.
When you say voice note, just hum it into the
app on my phone.
Yeah. Oh, voice.
Yeah, the idea things. And I do that with the kid songs too, but it's more as a matter of discipline, where I will close the door, turn on my voice notes, and start warbling around. But that's also what I do if I'm co-writing with somebody.
Yeah.
Right. So
you're not doing it on a piano or a guitar or anything. You're actually just from the ether creating ideas and then going, ooh, is that going to go to a...
That's actually really good. That actually is a really good question, because, okay, here's one difference. If I'm going to write a song just for pleasure or for an artist or with an artist, say I've got Pixie Lott or I got Billy Porter, I'm very grateful to Billy, and I have reconnected after 24 years, and he's a massive worldwide household name now.
Yep.
And he reached back out, and we're going to write some new songs. We're actually going to record an older one. Re-record an older one that never made. Oh no, I think we did it after that. But it's a song that he's always liked that we never really finished. And then with someone like him or Pixie or any artist that I've written with, there's an instrument right at the top, either on a keyboard or I'm on a guitar, and we start vibing. Nickelodeon or kids songs or Disney, Netflix, whatever, I'm more likely to immediately get a melody and a phrase of lyric that seems relevant to what they just told me in the conference call or what I just read in the brief. And it usually is something that is relevant to the process. So that is very different. And then I'll try to figure out the chords that I'm hearing under that and we go from there. But yeah, although with the Blues Clues theme song, they had a lot of references that kind of didn't have anything to do with each other in the brief. They were really confusing, actually. They had like the original jazzy, jammy Blues Clues music from the previous version of the show, but then they had like Shut Up and Dance, and they had like a Ben Lee song, and I was just like, okay, how does that all fit together? And I decided just to like, take my pants off and pick up a guitar and sit there in my underwear and just act like an idiot by myself, like basically in the equivalent of my pajamas, and just make it as open as I was literally hitting things with sticks in my room to get something going rhythmically. And I fell into something, it really was very much just what I would do. So I think you got to trust your own muse in a way.
Yeah.
You got to trust that something coming to you for a reason. That takes time, where you listen to your inspiration, but also, let yourself just vomit up a bunch of stuff and don't be afraid that it might not be any good. A big thing is a lot of talented people, they are worried about appearing talented, even to themselves, at all times. And it prevents them from really getting to anything good because they're afraid of doing something bad.
Yeah.
And you have to not be afraid to write a shitty first version of an idea, of a song, something you look back on and go, oh my God, I can't believe that it started with that.
Right.
Or just it'll change so much from the first kind of cool idea. I mean, going back to Blues Clues for a second, if you hear the beginning of the voice notes, it's actually pretty cool, but it's very much like a secondhand news, Fleetwood Mac, down, 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 very rhythmic and kind of Lindsey Buckingham. I mean, it went worlds away. It wandered into this whole other thing, but I didn't stop myself and critique myself. I just let it come, let it happen. And a lot of people are afraid to do that. A lot of people, especially if you grow up, I grew up as a young talent where a lot of people around me were it was a foregone conclusion how successful I was going to be. That can really set you up for failure. Because you go out in the world and guess what? There's a lot of really talented people out there. Some of them are better than you. Or they're not better, they're just different. And maybe their shit resonates more than yours right now. You got to just not be afraid that just you're you and no one else can be you. And if you're not doing you, then you're a hack.
Right.
You got to do you.
How do you think that your early exposure to Tony Robbins helped with that, to be able to, write for the garbage, for lack of a better term, where you're just not judging it, you're just letting it all come out and then start putting it together?
Hugely, Tony, hugely. And again, it's about you can control your destiny. I mean, that's always been his thing. You can create your destiny. And you know what? It's true. As hokey as it sounds, when you put good energy out there, consistent energy, grateful energy, it's mind-blowing how much better things start to get from you. It's almost like something hears you and that thing starts to move towards you at the same time.
Yeah.
And you got to be willing that it might move towards you really slowly. And again, you got to, that's the Colonel Sanders thing. You got to just, no, don't be, it's there. It's going to be there. You can, look, I don't want to get political, but if there's one positive thing that I've taken away from the Donald Trump presidency, as it relates to, say, my ultimate goal before, where I want to sell a kids show, I want to be a show creator and a showrunner. What do I know about that? And I realized, if Donald Trump at 70 years old can become president of the United States, a reality show guy who's doing McDonald's commercials, that Peter Zizzo can sell a kids TV show.
Yeah.
If that can happen, if that ridiculous black swan moment can happen, then they're saying anything like that, and you have to believe it.
That is so true. And would you notice the people that you have attracted in your life have that same mindset? That they too have overcome those obstacles, have hit those walls, and were able to push through with that level of consistency, gratitude, open-mindedness, lack of need for perfection, as it were, in the process.
Sure. I mean, I certainly know a lot of people like that. I've met them. And then I also know a lot of younger people who are still trying to figure it out. And I get to sort of impart that concept, like, don't be afraid to be terrible. Like my younger son is sort of, I don't say a victim, but he's sort of an example of like a hugely cerebral and intellectually talented, creative person. And then there's other stuff that he's not good at. He just doesn't have certain senses about the world that he actually inherited all that from me, because I'm the same way. And so what I have tried to teach him is, but you're always going to suck at that stuff. That's not the stuff you're great at. Everybody sucks at some shit. You don't have to tense up and be defensive because you got lost trying to find a place. That happens to me every week. Well, not these weeks because you're home most of the time, right? But I just said, but you're amazing at this other stuff. So the stuff you suck at, you got to find ways around it. I have an accountant that does all my bill paying and does all my stuff and all my investing and all my saving, because I'm not going to be consistent with it.
Right.
I know that it's a barrier for me, that I'm never going to be that good at it, and I'm okay with it. So what? Doesn't mean I'm stupid. I'm not good at that. So I have someone help.
That's so valuable. And I think that that idea of being able to accept what you're good at and not good at, because I think that sometimes some of us can get locked into kind of lamenting or wishing we were one way, and having evidences that we should be, because I grew up in this environment, or all these things that would come in that would dictate that potentially you had all of those resources available, and it's just not who you are. And that's tough. And I think for you were able to overcome that at an early age, to go, hey, you know what? It's okay. I'm not going to be the artist.
I don't know if it was an early age, but I definitely eventually realized that
reasonably early. I mean, some people are still holding on to that. I think of Uncle Ricky, from Napoleon Dynamite, right? Still holding on to being the quarterback and lamenting and, and I think the fact that you were able to do what you did, change direction a little bit, right? It wasn't a huge thing because you're still writing and all that, but that's a big part of someone to let go of. And I think that's huge that you're able to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the frustrating thing is that it really shouldn't be huge for anyone to be able to do it. I'm about to write a book about songwriting. I've just decided in the recent weeks, because I've done a bunch of these sort of mentoring things online classes that invite me to talk and stuff. And I really liked it. And I found like, I think what I've learned and been through as a songwriter and how it infuses and informs my sense of craft and sense of ability to finish things and do things successfully would be really helpful to share, because a lot of it's about the fear. Fear drives most of our decision making. It really does, if you think about it. Fear drives most of our decision making. I have a friend who got back into a relationship at one point in his life because he was so afraid of being alone, and he started to romanticize a past relationship that had some good qualities, but clearly had proven itself over the many years that they tried to not be one that really worked.
Right.
And they had to relearn that, because he made a decision in a wrong moment because he was scared. And it's the same thing. I just said I'm about to write a songwriting book. That's scary to me. Mm-hmm. Right. But I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. And you may, the first chapters, you may go, I'm going to redo them.
Yeah. Well, I wrote a few pages and a few other pages, and I've got a bunch of notes right here. In the past few days. And at this point, I'm far enough along because I'm 137 years old.
Yeah.
That I want to suck at this at first. Because if I just go, I'm going to come back 2 days later and read it and be like, oh, that little piece is great. I'm going to put that over here. And this thing, I don't need to talk about that. That's boring. I practically fell asleep. You pick out little nuggets and then you go from there, and then you go, and you do that a bunch of times, and eventually you go, I know how I want to outline this thing now.
Yep.
So the first part should be this, and this would plug into that. It almost becomes like this puzzle that you start putting together, and then it becomes less overwhelming because you've chunked it out in your mind.
Yep.
It's another thing I learned from Tony, the chunking thing.
Yeah.
Into its I'm blanking on the word, but into its little pieces.
Yep.
Rather than this whole great American novel that has to be the greatest thing that anyone's ever read since Tolstoy, Just write your crappy book, man. Nobody cares. Nobody's waiting.
And the people who do care aren't going to notice any of the issues or stuff that you would go back and go, they're going to be like, this was amazing.
And you don't notice that the stuff that you listen to, the songs that you love, or the productions or the books, you don't know that those guys also have to take their pants off and run around the room like an idiot and want to kill themselves at one point because they suck and they're a fraud. And now everyone's going to find out, and I give up. This is the worst thing ever. And then it ends up becoming, Gone Girl,
right?
Or Harry Potter, or whatever.
Well, the other thing that was interesting as you're sharing that, I remember oftentimes, and this happened a lot with when I was working a lot with Russ, I would do a mix for him, and I'd be like, this is awesome, this is great, and I'd send it in, and he'd be like, it's not quite, no, and no, and the things I was like, wow, okay, I was way off. And other times I'd send them kind of where I'm at, okay, here's kind of where I'm at, just and be like, it's great. Just tweak the vocals a little bit, and a little here, and we're good. I'm like,
you didn't know you were done. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, it was okay.
Well, the most famous example of that ever was "I Will Always Love You."
Yep.
David Foster. That was a cassette of a board mix from when they did the strings.
Yeah.
And Clive was like, "This is the record," and David Foster was like, "Don't ever call me again. You just ruined my career." And I would have been Foster in that scenario. But Clive wasn't listening from the same place.
Right.
He was listening very purely and very innocently, and it hit him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to change. I think Drops of Jupiter by Train, a similar thing. I think it was a board mix from the string date. That's why the strings were so loud.
Yeah.
And Donnie Ienner just loved that rough mix, and that became the record.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't need it slicker.
Well, and I think that's instructive as well to the rawness and the authenticity, the power of that, of just being real and allowing that to just be, instead of trying to constantly mess with it to get it perfect, because obviously there's no such thing as perfection anyway.
No, well, they say it's the enemy of the good, right?
Yep. Well,
Jimmy Braylower used to say, I don't know where he got it, that was absolutely perfect without actually being any good.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm so appreciative of you taking this time. How can people, if they want to learn more about you and they want to start tracking, you know, when the book is going to be coming out and all of that?
I
Like,
wasn't tracking that yet. I
well,
got a couple of days of notes taking under my belt.
no, of course. But,
Yeah.
you know, it's just still, I mean, I think you have so much to offer, and I'm sure that people would love to learn more about, you know, who you are, and there maybe even be opportunities that that are existing in the ether here that, you know,
right now I don't really have any materials that I would say you can go to. I mean, I'm certainly on social media. I'm on Instagram under Peter Zizzo, P Zizzo on Twitter, but that's me just being really pissed off about politics most of the time.
Okay.
That's where I vent. You're not going to learn about songwriting very much. Every once in a while will be something. I'm not that, Facebook, I sort of check into every once in a while. I'll post a song, but they can message me. They can hit me up.
Okay.
I don't always respond right away. But I love talking about this stuff with people, especially if you got a good question. I love to answer it, and hopefully, this book will address a lot of this sort of philosophy that I've developed. That's really not mine, but it's culled from all this stuff, everything from Tony to different songwriters and talented people that I've worked with, that I've learned from. By the way, the aforementioned Mike Mangini, he was a guy through whom I realized that, wow, I can't ever be great at what he's great at, and he can't ever be great at what I'm great at, and neither of us cared.
Right.
We both kind of couldn't figure out how each of us could do our thing, but it made us a really good team and made us best friends.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think it's a powerful thing. I remember one time, drops. I don't want to drop names. No one's going to know them except you and I. But Steve Peck. Remember Steve Peck?
I think about him. I wonder.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know where he is or what happened to him?
No.
He was sick. I mean, he was.
He had MS, right? He was pretty bad. He was.
Anyone knows where Steve Peck's at? I would love to. That's a message I would invite.
Yeah.
Because he was a really somebody that really inspired me way back in the day.
Talented guy, nuts too, very great. It was fun working with him. But I remember one time he his kind of coaching to me, and it was the opposite of Rick Kerr in this sense. So Steve Peck would, after he did a mix, he would mess up everything. He would take the if it was tape that, he would say, here's where the vocal is or whatever on the compressors or EQs, whatever. He would move them around too and put them on different stuff. So no one can duplicate what I do. I just messed up everything. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Kerr would be like, I don't care, because you're going to do something with something I did that I.
Oh yeah, he would show you exactly. He would literally teach you what he was doing.
Yeah, he's like, because you're going to use it, and you're going to probably do something that I'm going to be inspired by. And it was just so interesting, differences of opinions, and neither one is right or wrong. It's just interesting to see how people look at what they're doing and and that we all have those little concerns in some level. And
honestly, more often than not, and maybe Steve Peck wasn't so much an example of this, but man, he was great.
Yeah.
When I get to work with the top guys, they were the nicest, and they were also the ones that were the most willing and excited to show me how they were doing what they were doing. Yeah. You're not going to be able to do what they do if they show you what compressor they use and what the settings are for a vocal. Who gives a shit? Yeah. You're not Tom Lord Alge. You can't do that. And I remember Tom. I remember hearing all from so many people. Oh, he hates producers. Don't go in the studio when he's mixing. Trust me, he's a bully. He's an asshole if he doesn't like you, and if you're a producer, he just hates notes, and he just but he nails it, and he's like the best, and he's awesome. And I kept having these situations where he would mix a song. I didn't get to meet him, and I'd have no notes. I couldn't even believe how good it was. So then I went to him when I had a budget to mix half a record that I was doing, went out to Miami, and I was really nervous being in the studio with him. But I was the producer of the whole album, and I wanted to be there. He was going to mix. I had Kevin Killen doing a bunch of things, and Kevin's the nicest guy in the world, but Tom had that reputation. He's a paisan, and he's got it. He's intimidating. And I went in the studio with him, and he was awesome. He was a sweetheart. I'd have a note, and he'd make the change. Or or one time I actually came back in the morning. It's a great story. I said, the vocal seems a little overpowered by the bass, or the bass isn't loud enough, or there's something I wasn't hearing. And he looked at me and he was like, really? I was like, yeah. He goes, where did you listen to it? I said, in my car. Well, what kind of car? It's a Jeep that I rented. Can we go out and listen to it together in the Jeep? I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. We'll go out and listen to it. He goes in the Jeep, and it's got one of those parametric EQs, consumer parametric EQs. And I had it flat. I put it flat and listened to the mix flat. And he puts the mix on, and it starts playing, and he starts messing around with the EQs. I'm like, well, you're cheating. What are you doing? I'm like, I was listening to it flat. He was like, Peter, these aren't NS10s. These are like crappy consumer speakers. Just like do what you would do when you were listening to a CD or the radio. Would you leave it like this? I'm like, no, actually I wouldn't. He's like, right. So do it, get it to where you like the way it sounds, and then listen to the mix. It was like one of those ways of thinking. And I said, I got to tell you, you got a reputation for being like really difficult to work with for producers. He goes, that's because a lot of them don't know what the fuck they're doing. And they say stupid shit to me, and I don't have time for it. He said, but you sent me an organized mix. Your ideas make sense. And so why would I be difficult?
Well, and you're also a nice guy to begin with. So the way you approach it, you're very you're just an approachable, great person. So you would never be like, hey, this sucks, make it better.
No, right. No, I don't bring in an attitude. Jesus. Yeah. No. But or Mick Gazowski, another guy, nicest guy in the world, man. He'd give you the shirt off.
Funny. Oh my gosh.
Nobody want to see him without the shirt on his back, but I mean, he'd give it to you. Yeah, so funny. I mean, I don't want to get in the weeds of like the inside jokes back in the day.
We used to go up there, and Russ and I and Pat, we just go up and hang with there. It's some of the best nights. We're just
the studio grade mic pre thing. Because Bob had that going for so long to such ridiculous degrees, but the fact that I was going to get to work with Mick Gazowski, I was nervous and excited, and we were doing the slaves for him the night before, and I was driving out the next day with the reels, and I show up at his place, and he's talking to me. Oh yeah, I'm really excited. He's like, by the way, this mix is going to be really great because look what I got. And on his wall, where all his racked gear was a label affixed above a submixer that said studio grade mic pre's with arrows pointing to the thing.
Remember? And
I looked at it, and I looked at him, and I was like, he called you about Bob? Yeah, he's a great guy. I guess you were in the bathroom last night, but he called me and told me like, oh, say studio grade mic pre's. Hey folks, it's an inside joke. I'll get off it. But he was like, oh, I just got a Brother Pete touch. I'll make a whole label. Like he just ran with it. The top guys are usually the guys I always end up like. There's a reason, because they're also, when people, if I'm gonna have a meeting with a network or a production company, or they're calling me to maybe do something with me on a TV show, one of the things I know they want to see is if I'm a guy they even want to deal with. Yeah. I think one of the reasons I won Blue's Clues is there was competition, but apparently some of the other writers were pushing back about some things and had some attitudes about some things that gave me a little bit of an edge, because I heard their stuff was great too. And Nickelodeon was like, well, we've worked with Zizzo for years, but he's a really easy guy to work with. That's a big part of it, by the way, if you're creative and you're trying to be in the business of being creative, is the relationships you form. And
well, that's the thing. Yeah, you get you're two things. You're being super vulnerable. So you have to be able to be comfortable and screw up, fail, write some crappy stuff, or sing off, whatever it is to find that zone. And also you're spending a lot of time with them. Sure. It's like a family. That's the other thing that sometimes, the lack of glamour in the industry. It's not all red carpets and champagne. It's getting down and dirty and getting studio tans, which is what I have still.
Well, luckily I have a lot of sun coming in. Well, not today as much, but so.
Well, awesome, brother. Thank you so much.
This is epic, man. It's been like 2 hours.
I could go longer. I got to go because I have a tenant waiting for me to come pick up rent. And
I got to take my pants off and start working.
Oh, cool. Well,
I'm not wearing them now.
Lesson 1: take off pants.
Take off your pants, folks. That's that. Yeah, it's gonna be the name of my book. Take off your pants.
Yeah.
Your open creativity.
That's right. It frees the energy.
It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. Depending on how tight your underwear is.
Well, then
anyway,
after that.
On that note, well, Doug, it's great to see you, man. I love you, brother, and
love you too. And let's not make it so long to catch up as well. I mean, not length and time. The conversation length is great. I mean, not 20 years. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Great, man. Well, thank you so much, and let's do it again, man.
You got it, brother. Mi casa, su casa.
All right. Take
Talk
care.
to you in a bit. You're out. Peace.